Many people think of MODOK as a joke character, and well, he kinda is. But that doesn't mean that you should not fear him. Despite appearances, he is a super genius and can sometimes be capable enough to accomplish impressive feats, especially when we peer into the multiverse. Welcome back, Nerd Squad. It's me, Amanda. Join me as we count down the top 10 unstoppable alternate versions of MODOK. And let me know what you think of MODOK as a villain in the comments. Terrifying or terribly silly? Number 10. MODOK. This version of MODOK is not to be confused with the original form of the original Earth 616 MODOK, whose acronymic name ended originally in a C also. Where the Earth 616 MODOK C typically stands for computation or computing, this version of MODOK C stood for conquering. This MODOK hails from Earth 20051, first appearing in the 2000 series Marvel Adventures The Avengers. Here, MODOK successfully converts the Avengers into his own loyal minions by turning them into MODOKs. Fortunately for the Avengers, but not so fortunate for MODOK I guess, they would realize that this transformation was only temporary and would manage to break free from his control. Here, MODOK originally stood for Mental Organism Designed Only for Conquest. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, and like me, you also love all the supervillains, be sure to check out our supervillain playlist for even more villainy. Number 9. MODAM. What happens when you combine MODOK with Doc-Ock? MODAM! MODAM is actually a female version of MODOK. She was unique in the sense that she had long metallic Dr. Octopus-esque arms in addition to what MODOK had. She was also equipped with a doomsday chair, and of course she had lipstick because she's a lady MODOK, so you know, we gotta know. Gotta have that lipstick. Initially, MODAM was Alinka Barankova before she was transformed, although for a time she was actually suspected to have originally been Hank Pym's first wife, Maria Travoya, but we learned the truth. She didn't last too long in the comics, about 10 years, first appearing in West Coast Avengers issue number 36, where we thought of course that she was Maria, and dying in Captain America issue number 3 in the late 90s series of that comic. Number 8. Ultimate MODOK. This version of MODOK definitely looks a lot more terrifying than most. This version of George Tarleton was the head of AIM in terms of their research division anyways, on their space station. He ended up transforming from man to machine to just straight up monstrosity, and the transformation happened pretty quickly there. During a fight against Galactus, Vision, also of Earth 1610, turned on him. In this reality, Vision is a female android who ended up ripping off Tarleton's head after he chose to sacrifice another AI that she had grown attached to during combat. From here, Tarleton would become more the kind of MODOK we'd know him for, with his head moving around on spindly, spider-like limbs and managing to survive despite being separated from his body. At one point, MODOK returns with his own Galactus cult and even manages to take hold of and control part of the Galactus swarm. Number 7. MODOK from Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. This version of MODOK also has an acronymic name that stands instead for Mental Organism Designed Only for Conquest. The acronym was likely changed for his name in this case because he appears in an animated show intended for general audiences, and Marvel therefore probably didn't want to go with the more traditional K for killing at the end because, you know, children, while still wanting MODOK though to be fearsome here. Instead of just focusing on, you know, C for computing with C for, you know, conquesting. This animated version of the character is pretty powerful in regards to what he can do. Not only is he a super genius who is said to rival even some of Marvel's greatest minds such as Reed Richards and Doctor Doom, but he can also fire deadly psionic bolts as well as straight up control minds. So, you know, pretty crazy. Number 6. BRODOK. BRODOK is technically another version of another character on our list. BRODOK was created during a period in MODOK's life when they wanted to reinvent themselves by reforming. To do this, MODOK decided to work on his own image, his outer image, by building a new, more muscular, humanoid, and I'm sure what he thought was a more desirable form. In this new body, he took the name of BRODOK, which stands for Bio-Robotic Organism Designed Overwhelmingly for Kissing. However, after he was rejected, no kissing for BRODOK, he turned to the side of villainy once more, transforming those who had rejected him into monsters and causing the West Coast Revengers to reform in order to take him down. During MODOK's time as BRODOK, the capability to feel love was also added into his programming. So this is basically like an already powerful alternate version of MODOK, but with the addition of being able to love and also muscles. Number 5. MODOK, father of Maestro. This version of MODOK MODOK could be considered more powerful considering that he's kind of the main one responsible for the creation of Maestro. You know, one of the most powerful versions of the Hulk to have ever existed. This version of George Charlton hails from the alternate future belonging to Earth 9200. Here, the world is destroyed by a nuclear attack, and MODOK and AIM end up being the organization to help attempt to save the human race, or what's left of it, by kidnapping those who were successfully mutated by radiation. The hope is to one day rebuild civilization using these people that they've kidnapped. One of these people that they kidnap is of course the Hulk. Being that the Hulk is so strong and, well, pretty unruly, they keep him in stasis in a virtual reality program. However, eventually this VR program begins to fall apart as time goes on, and Hulk comes out of stasis. While MODOK explains what happened and why AIM kept him in stasis, asking now for Hulk's help in rebuilding society, the Hulk actually rejects MODOK's pleas, instead deciding to venture out on his own to explore what is left of the world, and eventually of course becoming Maestro. MODOK would end up later being killed by Maestro when he attacked AIM's headquarters, but not before MODOK was able to free the Abomination, updating him on the situation before setting him free to get revenge for MODOK on Maestro. Number 4. MODOK Superior. This MODOK is an alternate in the sense that he is a clone. He hails from the reality still of Earth 616, the main reality. He was created from a clone brain of George Charlton himself, but given a completely new body and a new personality. This version of MODOK would end up as a member of Intelligentsia and would surprisingly temporarily forge an alliance with S.H.I.E.L.D. At one point he almost betrayed S.H.I.E.L.D. and enacted a plan to destroy them before he realized that he was actually in love with Maria Hill, which prevented him from following through with said plan and resulted in him ultimately leaving S.H.I.E.L.D. This version of MODOK would continue down a path for good and would eventually set his sights on saving the world rather than destroying it, becoming a hero. He would temporarily control Ultimo's body, becoming Ultimodok. Although for a good while MODOK Superior had acted as a hero, he would return to the side of evil, and more recently has even been spotted in the X-Men comics where he attacked a cruise ship. Later he ended up being rescued and recruited by Orcus as a contractor. MODOK's extremely intelligent and computational mind grants him the ability to basically see into probable futures. He also is considered to be tougher than the original MODOK, as he doesn't have as many nerves, so he's not as capable of feeling pain. This version of MODOK was also the one who for a time lived as BRODOK, and he's kind of become like the main MODOK I think now, but still, you know, he wasn't the original MODOK, so I feel like we can count him. MODOK Superior. Number 3. Stop motion MODOK. Probably one of my favorite versions of the character comes to us from Marvel's MODOK, a short-lived stop-motion animated series that only got one season sadly, despite it being a strangely amazing series, who honestly, if you haven't seen it, you should go watch it. I don't really spoil anything in this point, I'm just gonna tell you about it a little bit. In the show, Patton Oswalt voices MODOK, who starts off season 1 as the head of AIM before being tricked basically out of his position as he begins to go through a midlife crisis with his family, with even his wife, Jodie, seemingly turning on him and asking for a divorce. Despite the trials and tribulations that MODOK goes up against, he perseveres, and it is for his resilience that I feel like he also deserves a spot on our list, despite his many failings throughout the show. And honestly, even despite those many failings, MODOK still manages, I will say, to end up on top in many ways, although often at the cost of his own and others' happiness. This version of MODOK also seems to have the actual family that MODOK Superior saw in a vision. However, this family wasn't real for MODOK Superior, who after learning that they didn't exist, sought to basically create his own version. Whereas for this version of MODOK, they're just his family and they're real and they do exist. Number 2. Baby MODOK. These baby MODOKs might actually be some of the most powerful ones in existence, and if they put their little MODOK minds to it, possibly the most unstoppable. And while they haven't accomplished too much in the comics, they do have reality warping powers when they work together, which honestly, that's pretty crazy. They made their first appearance in Miss Marvel issue number 39 during Dark Reign, where Miss Marvel was actually Carla Sofin, aka Moonstone. They also appeared and helped Carol Danvers' Miss Marvel when she returned in issue number 45 of the series. While the baby MODOKs, or storytellers as they were also known, worked for AIM as part of their Project Storyteller, having inherited their powers from their elder brother Gavin, aka the character known as Storyteller, these little MODOKs also were reaching out in the hopes of breaking free from AIM. As Gavin had been freed by the heroic Miss Marvel, they attempted to contact the hero, but instead their call was answered by Carla Sofin, who of course was impersonating Miss Marvel at the time on Norman Osborn's Dark Avengers. Number 1. MODOK, Ruler of the World. This version of MODOK hails from an alternate reality seen in Fall of the Hulk's Red Hulk issue number 4. Here, on Earth 1064, the intelligentsia succeeded in their plans to conquer the world. As a result, MODOK is one of the rulers of the planet and even ends up getting himself a new human body, although his face still looks super weirdly scrunched up, I gotta say. He also ended up making Dr. Doom his fool. That's how powerful this version of the villain is. This version of MODOK exists in a vision of the future where intelligentsia also seem to bring advancement and world peace to Earth the world over with their rule. At least, that seems to be what's implied here. That's all the time we have for today. I hope you enjoyed exploring the multiverse with me and looking at various different versions of MODOK. I'll see you next time, but until then, you stay nerdy, YouTube. Bye!